Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Sunday, October 30th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Northwestern game is in 6 days. The game against Michigan in 27 days. We are high up above Beaver Stadium right now. I'm joined by Kevin Noon here in lovely State College, Pennsylvania, where Ohio State has defeated Penn State by, I really literally need to check the score, 44-31. This was a weird one, Kevin. This was a game where Ohio State couldn't get the ball in the end zone, couldn't run the ball, couldn't throw the ball a whole lot outside of Marvin Harrison and Cade Stover. And the defense gave us some big plays, and they couldn't get guys on the ground. But also the defense ended up kind of playing really well. They got a bunch of offense out of the defensive line, which is weird, and Ohio State wins, hangs 44 points on Penn State. This was a weird one.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it was a continuation of Iowa in terms of the offense bogging down, the defense playing well, the defense turning the opponent over. We saw all of that there. Once again, the running struggles were real. Mayan Williams ends up leaving the game, returns to the sidelines with a hoodie with his jersey over it. So, we'll have to see kind of what's going on with Mayan Williams. Trevion Henderson didn't get it going until he got it going with a late rushing touchdown. But you were right. When you talk about Cade Stover, you talk about Marvin Harrison Jr., those guys both had big games on the defensive side of the ball. Zach Harrison was able to get his big mid up and create some plays. And then, of course, JT Tuimoloau had himself a day. Win in advance, and that's what Ohio State did. I mean, you just have to win in advance. We're getting to the point of the season where you can't afford to drop a game. They're like, well, there are not going to be a lot of undefeated teams, but it also matters when you lose. So now that we're getting into November, you got to go now. So they have 3 weeks of games that we would think wouldn't be as challenging before the big one against that team up north. There's a lot for this team to work on.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot for this team to work on. And I think number one on that list right now has to be the concerns about the run game. Trevion Henderson finishes with 16 carries for 78 yards and 2 touchdowns. And it's like, wow, that's great. Except with 9 minutes left in the game, he didn't have 41 yards of that because that was 1 touchdown, and 7 yards of that because that was another touchdown. So take 48 yards off of his total, and all of a sudden the other carries he had all day were 14 carries for 30 yards and no touchdowns. This is 2 weeks in a row, and now Mayan Williams. We saw Mayan Williams during Carmen, Ohio after the game. He had his arm in a sling, had some kind of a couple fingers in some kind of a cast or a brace or something like that. So maybe a dislocation, something like that. How big of a concern is the running game right now? Because this is a couple weeks in a row in which they haven't been able to run the ball, and Michigan ran all over Penn State, 418 yards. So how big of a concern is it that Ohio State wasn't able to do that?
I mean, I think it's always got to be a concern. One of the big differences of this year's team was supposed to be, well, this team's balanced. This team can run. One of the other big differences is this team can play defense. So, taking that off the table and looking at the running question, it's a real question because once Mayan was lost, it was the Trevion Henderson show. They didn't go to true freshman Dallin Hayden. They didn't go to linebacker as of 2 weeks ago, Chip Trainum. They don't have T.C. Caffey as a walk-on, but he's injured for the season. So where is this going to come from? Is this a running back issue? Is this an offensive line issue? More specifically, is this an offensive guard issue? Are they not getting the play out of the guards and maybe lump the center in there because the pass pro is real. The pass pro has been really good, but the run blocking hasn't been good, and we chalked that up last year to 4 tackles and a center. Well, 2 tackles, 2 guards, a center, and they've rushed for 180 yards between the last 2 games, maybe something in that neighborhood. Not good enough. They've got to fix it.
Yeah, that's going to be something that, you will see bad weather at some point this month, just on average. You're going to have one bad weather game, and Ohio State has really not had that so far this year. It was a little windy at Michigan State, but nothing, you have not had 30 degrees, you have not had snowing, you have not had sleet. You're going to get one of those, and you're going to have to be able to run the ball, or you're going to have to be able to use the short passing game, because you're not necessarily going to be able to just bombs away in those games. And the short passing game wasn't great either. That's something that Ryan Day views as sort of an extension of the run game, and you kept seeing these quick screens out to Mecca Buka or guys like that, and they kept getting tackled for 2-yard losses. And that, if that's an extension of the run game and that's also not working, where do you go from there?
You got to retool that running game, and yeah, I mean, eventually Ohio State, just the cumulative weight of everything was too much for Penn State to handle down the stretch, but that is problematic. Is that going to be a problem against Northwestern? Probably not. Is that going to be a problem against Indiana? Probably not. Is that going to probably be a problem against Maryland? Probably not. Ain't going to fly against Michigan, so they got to get this fixed. They got to get healthy. They need to kind of re-examine some of the things that they're doing out there, because everything's in front of Ohio State. Ohio State is still undefeated. Everything is going on, and this running game, just eerily feeling like some of the shortfalls that they had offensively last year. And while it's a offense for the ages or whatever, we're going to see that total offense number start to come down. We're going to see some of these other numbers, certainly the rushing offense numbers, start coming down. So they need to examine this and figure it out. You've got 3 weeks to go to the lab. And for everything about Ohio State's schedule being backloaded or whatever, these are the 3 weeks that you've got to figure it out.
Yeah, and we're several minutes into the show, and I feel like we've been talking entirely negatively, and it's like, yes, and Ohio State won on the road in Happy Valley against probably the second toughest team in the regular season schedule. They won 44-31, and they were down 21-16 with 9 minutes and 26 seconds left. And then 6 minutes and 9 seconds later, they were winning 44-24. I mean, that is a team that has the talent to just hit the Jets and just, you're sort of running a race, and you're kind of running backwards a little bit, and you're not maybe resting a little bit, and then when it's time to hit the Jets, they can go in a way, and this is offense and defense, that very few other teams in the nation can.
Why didn't they do that all game?
Well,
why didn't they do that all game? That's what I've read that on the message boards. Why haven't they? Why weren't they able to do that there? And Ryan Day is stubborn, and this and that and the other. I mean, sometimes certain looks don't allow certain things to happen, but there really were a lot of questions on social media as I was monitoring that during the game of is there some stubbornness? Is Ryan Day trying to show that his team is tougher than last year? The vertical game was fantastic. Ohio State's vertical game was fantastic. The middle of the field was there all day for Marvin Harrison Jr. All day. And they utilized it when they needed to, and they got away from it at other points. But to your earlier point, Ohio State won. There are going to be a lot of teams out there that are going to be feeling bad about themselves, coming out of their games. Ohio State certainly has some things that it needs to self-reflect upon, but we went in with 6 undefeateds going into the day on Saturday.
I think so. Yeah.
To be determined what's going to happen there. Ohio State's still one of them.
Yeah, and that's, you said earlier, survive in advance, and I think that's kind of where you are. And you can sort of look ahead and say they're going to have to do some other stuff, and if they're going to continue to survive in advance, to the end of the regular season. But this is a team where you're getting stuff from different places. Where, okay, the running game wasn't there. Well, you got a bunch of offense out of the defensive line, which is a weird thing to say, but Zach Harrison picks off a pass off a tipped pass. JT Tuimoloau intercepts your pass. JT Tuimoloau has a strip sack that sets up a touchdown. JT Tuimoloau has a pick six. I mean, that is, and those are all guys who are 5-star guys coming out of high school, which just generally means you're just a little more athletic than everyone else out on the field, and you can just do a little bit. You can do stuff that normal people can't do. Ohio State has enough of those guys that, when they really need to turn on the Jets, they can turn on the Jets, and 21-16 deficit turns into 44-24 lead in just over 6 minutes. That's not normal.
No, and I think a lot of people are going to be fixated on the pick six by JT Tuimoloau. His other interception where he jumped a route as a defensive end is going to be the one I'm going to remember more, because there are not a lot of cats out there that can make that play. And we're talking anywhere, like at any level. And what he did out there was ridiculous. It goes to show. Remember, year one for JT Tuimoloau, he didn't commit until the 4th of July. He missed out on summer practice. He got in, saw a lot more playing time than anybody expected, had a full off season, and now we're starting to see it. And Oh, yeah. He's a player who's probably held on about every play, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something you've heard from the coaching staff. You've heard from JT a little bit. He doesn't like to complain about that, but the coaching staff is aware. Brian Day has been asked, and yes, the coaching staff is aware. Another player who does stuff that a lot of people can't do is C.J. Stroud. This was not, the most incredible C.J. Stroud performance that we've seen. But 26 of 33, 354 yards, a touchdown, no picks. He had that play right before halftime where it looked like they were going to be able to get in, at least get a field goal. Maybe you steal a touchdown right before halftime. And I didn't have a great look at it. Was he was kind of like running around and or did someone come clean?
Somebody came clean. They just sent more than Ohio State had blockers home. I mean, it was a case of where, DeJuan Jones looked like at the end he didn't have anybody to pick up, but I think I picked up the play well after the fact. Credit to Penn State. They weren't going to allow that situation. They knew Ohio State needed to make a quick throw. 6 seconds left, no timeouts. A lot of confusion whether or not Ohio State had a timeout or not. The stadium scoreboard said they didn't. I guess the television broadcast said that they did. Ryan Day admitted that he knew that he didn't have any timeouts, but he even ran down the field and was about to call a timeout. Don't Chris Webber anybody, and didn't call a timeout at that point. It certainly was a missed opportunity, and when Ohio State was sitting at 16, 14, and sometimes like that, you were thinking, how critical was that?
Yeah, to steal another 3 points or 7 points there would have been big. But, Penn State played a fantastic game. Penn State played really well. And I think that had to be probably a little bit frustrating for James Franklin to have your team come in, you play really well, and you still lose. And, 9 minutes left, it looks like, oh, man, we might do this. And then, nope, very much nope. You have to give Penn State a lot of credit. And this is everyone wants to play the comparative scores game with Ohio State and Michigan against Penn State, Ohio State and Michigan against Iowa. We talked about this last week. And, Ohio State against Iowa, Ohio State's comparative score is much more impressive. Penn State's comparative score, Michigan's is much more impressive. And it's just Michigan played Iowa in Iowa City. Penn State played Ohio State in Happy Valley, and then the other ones, they got them at home. That makes a difference. That makes a big difference. And this is something we talked about before this game, so this is not us just sort of like retconning something. I think you have to, we're going to spend the next month talking about Michigan because, we'll talk a little Northwestern this week, but only a little because that's probably not going to be the single most thrilling game that Ohio State fans watch all fall. And frankly, we see the numbers, we see your comments. You're ready to think about Michigan a little bit, and so we will probably be talking a good bit of Michigan this week as well. But yeah, it is going to be a really, really fascinating month as Ohio State sort of heads into the home stretch of the 2022 football season. Again, a big win at Penn State, 44-31. Weird game, but as Kevin said earlier, survive in advance. So that is going to wrap it up for us here in Happy Valley. We have plenty more coverage at BuckeyeHuddle.com. We'll have a full photo gallery up a little later on Saturday night. Plenty of written coverage. Got all sorts of player interviews. If you did not watch our post-game show, we did more than 2 hours of live post-game, including interviews with Ohio State players and coaches, an interview with James Franklin, insight, analysis, instant reaction, the Buckeye Weekly instant reaction show with Tony Gerderman and I, all sorts of great stuff, all at youtube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.